You didn't just reject your Luna, Rhexnor, you signed your own death warrant. The crowd's murmurs died down to a sudden, shocked gasp. Alpha Rhexnor's voice, cold and dismissive, rang out. You are an anomaly, Elara, unfit to wear the Luna's crown. A sharp, jarring shove sent me reeling. As I gasped and the fabric of my dress rustled with my fall, a powerful, deep voice cut through the noise. Mine. A sudden, almost magical silence fell. When one alpha's cruelty shatters your destiny, an eternal king's love rebuilds you. But a forbidden bond comes at a price. And the wolves are coming to claim back what they lost. I had always known my path. Every admiring glance from the Midnight Fang Pack, every whispered rumor, confirmed it. My future was clear. I, Elara Veil, with my striking dark hair and eyes like a forest at dusk, was destined to be Alpha Rhexnor's Luna, Rhexnor Sol. His name alone commanded respect. His presence, cloaked in power, set him apart. His gaze, often molten gold, had lingered on me during hunts, in the quiet evenings, promising a bond that felt inevitable, an honor I accepted with every beat of my heart. The pack's certainty mirrored my own. Elara was destined to stand beside the imposing Alpha. Today was the mate-claiming ceremony, the most sacred declaration of true mates before the goddess and our entire community. Anticipation pulsed through the air, thick and potent as the scent of pine and damp earth. I had dressed with care, a simple, elegant black gown that accentuated my features, my heart hammering against my ribs beneath the silk. I stood among the unmated females, a nervous thrill coiling in my stomach as Alpha Rhexnor, magnificent and powerful in his black cloak, stepped forward. His steps were deliberate, powerful, leading straight for me. My breath hitched, a silent prayer forming on my lips, but he didn't reach for my neck, didn't cut my cheek with the familiar warmth I craved. Instead, his large hand clamped onto my shoulder, a sudden, cold pressure. His gaze, once so warm, was now devoid of emotion, a mask of cold, hard judgment. His voice, cutting and echoing through the stunned silence of the pack, declared, Elara Veil, you carry a hidden taint, an abnormality that taints the purity of our lineage. You are an anomaly, a flaw in the sacred weave, unfit to bear the Luna's crown, unworthy of the Midnight Fang. A sharp, brutal shove sent me reeling. The world tilted. The air was ripped from my lungs, not just from the physical push, but from the brutal words. The sting of the word anomaly was worse than any physical pain. Humiliation, sharp and agonizing, burned through my veins, eclipsing the heartbreak. Every eye felt like a laser, dissecting me, pitying me, condemning me. I was falling, a public spectacle, rejected, broken, and utterly alone. Rhexnor, the man I loved, my destined mate, had discarded me for a double standard of purity he had never held himself to. But I never hit the ground. Did that fierce beginning give you chills? We are only just getting started on Elara's journey from rejection to ruthless power. If you love stories of broken hearts and forbidden, fated love, make sure you don't miss a moment. Tap that subscribe button now and hit the notification bell so you'll be the first to know when the next chapter of this epic romance drops. Now, let's step into the shadow and discover the true meaning of the Eternal King's claim. The fall was arrested. Strong, cool hands, infinitely steady, had caught me. I was cradled against a solid, unyielding chest, the scent of ancient forests and cold moonlight replacing the damp earth and pine of my pack. My eyes, still wide with shock and unshed tears, met a pair of striking ruby eyes beneath hair like spun moonlight. He was the man from the edge of the crowd, the one with an aura of inescapable ancient power, Xavierus Blackwood, the eternal vampire king. He held me effortlessly, his gaze sweeping past me to where Rhexnor, now turning away with a dismissive flick of his cloak, walked back to the confused, stunned pack. Xavierus's voice, a low, dangerous purr, meant for Rhexnor yet vibrating through my very bones, announced, "You foolish creature have just discarded a galaxy for a single dead star. You cast aside what I have searched a millennium to find." A faint, frustrated, animalistic growl came from the retreating Rhexnor. Then Xavierus's attention returned fully to me. His ruby eyes, no longer fixed on the Alpha, burned with an intensity that held both ancient hunger and an undeniable possessive claim. His touch, cool as marble, gently stroked my cheek, chasing away the burning shame of Rhexnor's rejection. It was a touch that held centuries of conviction, a stark contrast to the Alpha's fragile certainty. His voice, softer, a silken promise just for me, declared, "Do not weep for the fool's betrayal, Elara. You are mine now, little wolf, and you will never fall again." My mind reeled. He knew my name. He had claimed me, not with the hesitant touch of a mate, but with the authority of a king. Every instinct screamed danger, warned me of the ancient enemy, the foe of the wolfkin, but my heart, shattered moments ago, clung to the strange comfort of his touch, the unwavering promise in his gaze. He lifted me completely, cradling me against him as the world dissolved into a dizzying rush of wind and shadow. We moved with impossible speed, the distant lights of my former pack village shrinking into insignificance. It was no longer a place of pain. It was a distant memory I was rapidly outrunning. His touch was a balm, a spark against my despair. The contact between us, skin against the silk of my dress, ignited something primal, undeniable. A connection not born of pack duty or fleeting passion, but of ancient fate. It thrummed between us, a silent language of power and possession. I was acutely aware of the hard muscle beneath the expensive fabric of his suit, the subtle chill of his body, and the overwhelming scent of cold elegance and raw power. Xavierus spoke again, his voice deep, close, reassuring. "Hush, Elara. Rhexnor's blindness was a divine gift, not a curse. His pathetic rejection was the necessary catalyst to awaken your true, fated bond. A bond far older and more powerful than anything he could ever comprehend." He slowed, finally stopping. The air around us solidified, heavy with the scent of ancient stone and indefinable magic. We were no longer in the forest, but in a vast, silent space. I blinked, seeing only shadows and opulence. I whispered, breathless, What bond? Who am I to you?" "You, Elara Veil, are not merely a rejected Luna," he explained. "Your lineage is tied to the first magic, a forbidden union that runs in your blood. You are a queen of the Veil, the one prophesied to bridge the two warring worlds, and I, as the eternal king, am your fate." He gently set me down in a chamber so vast it defied description, draped in dark silks and flickering torchlight. His hands lingered on my waist, the heat of my skin against his cool touch sparking again. "Your journey begins now," he finished. "Rhexnor saw your power and feared it, using flaw as an excuse for his own weakness. I, however, will teach you to command it." My heart, once broken, now beat with a new dark rhythm, entwined with his. I was no longer Elara, the rejected wolf. I was Elara, claimed by the Eternal King, into a destiny I could never have imagined, and in his powerful hands, in the electric current of our connection, I felt not fear, but a dawning sense of terrifying power and a strange, thrilling anticipation for the love and vengeance that was to come. I woke up to silence, a silence so profound it felt like the world outside had been muffled by centuries of ancient stone. Gone was the familiar scent of pine and damp earth. I was surrounded by a rich, cool perfume of jasmine and power. I lay upon a massive bed draped in midnight blue velvet and silver thread, the kind of luxury that made the Alpha's cabin look like a peasant's shack. The Obsidian Castle, Xavierus Blackwood's ancient domain. I pushed myself upright, the black silk shift I wore rustling softly. Where my rejected ceremonial gown had been, this garment felt like a second skin, elegant and empowering. The chamber was enormous, bathed in the deep, flickering glow of sconces carved from dark obsidian. Shadows stretched and retreated, making the room feel alive, yet entirely safe. My gaze landed on a figure standing by a tall, arched window. Xavierus. He hadn't moved since setting me down. Tall, impossibly handsome, and radiating a quiet, magnetic energy, he was watching the night. He turned then, his ruby eyes finding mine with instantaneous, possessive intent. "You slept for 12 hours, little wolf." His voice was a low, melodic rumble, carrying a note of satisfaction. "Your broken spirit required healing. The Obsidian Castle welcomes its queen." "I'm not a queen," I managed, my voice still catching on the memory of Rhexnor's rejection. He dismissed the protest with a slight, arrogant curve of his lips. He crossed the room with the fluid, lethal grace of a true predator, stopping by the bedside. The proximity was instant, overwhelming. The air between us thickened, heavy with unspoken desire and the undeniable pulse of our newfound bond. "You were always destined for a crown, Elara," he murmured, his gaze sweeping over my face, lingering on my lips. "Rhexnor offered you a subservient Luna title. I offer you an eternal throne." He reached out, his cool fingers tracing the line of my collarbone, directly over the spot where the Alpha's mark should have been. A shiver, not of fear, but of pure, electric anticipation traveled down my spine. "The magic within you, the star-touched lineage Rhexnor so ignorantly called a flaw, has been sleeping," Xavierus explained, his voice dipping low. "It requires a proper foundation. Power requires Pamen." From a velvet pouch at his side, he produced a small silver vial containing a liquid that glowed with a faint internal light. It smelled of earth, wine, and power. "This is the essence of my ancient bloodline. It won't turn you, but it will awaken what is dormant. It will make you strong enough to hold my claim, and strong enough to shatter the Alpha who dared to touch you in malice." He held the vial to my lips. His eyes were mesmerizing, demanding compliance, but also offering everything I had ever truly wanted, acceptance and power. He wasn't giving me comfort, he was giving me the tools for transformation. "Take it," he commanded, his voice a silken persuasion. "Embrace the darkness Rhexnor feared. Embrace your destiny with me." I didn't hesitate. I threw my head back and swallowed the cold, sharp liquid. A burning warmth ignited in my veins, spreading through my chest and settling deep in my core, replacing the crushing emptiness left by the pack's betrayal. When I looked back at Xavierus, the world seemed sharper, the shadows deeper, and the connection between us, already intense, had solidified into an unbreakable, passionate chain. "Good," he breathed, a genuine, possessive triumph lighting his ruby eyes. "Now, my queen, let the lessons begin." He leaned in, his lips hovering near my ear, his voice dropping to a seductive whisper. "You are chosen, and your transformation will be as breathtaking as your revenge." The elixir of the ancients worked fast, settling in my core not as a soothing balm, but as a restless, burning energy. Xavierus led me away from the opulent bedroom into a training area deep within the heart of the castle, a massive cavern lined with shimmering dark crystal. The change in me was immediate. My vision was sharper, the Vampire King's movements no longer blurred, and the raw power emanating from him felt less terrifying and more familiar. "Rhexnor called your lineage a taint," Xavierus began, his voice echoing in the chamber. He moved with a languid grace that was mesmerizing to watch, his attention wholly focused on me. He was a simple wolf bound by simple laws. He could only see the wolf. He missed the star. He stopped before me, his eyes demanding full attention. You, Elara, are a star-touched wolf, the forgotten descendants of the first lichens who mated with a powerful, benevolent feline. This is why you possess an elemental reservoir none of his pack will ever command. Your magic is rare, potent, and it was deliberately suppressed by your traditional pack to keep you manageable, to keep you a Luna, not a queen. The realization hit me harder than Rhexnor's push. The flaw he condemned was actually a deep, powerful gift. Xavierus saw the fire ignite in my eyes, the hot, furious mix of betrayal and dawning realization. Good, he purred, recognizing the surge of emotion. That rage is fuel. Your kind, the wolves, are taught to dampen emotion, to seek calm. That is weakness. My world feeds on intensity. Your power is not born from serenity. It is born from the deepest parts of your heart. Your humiliation, your desire for justice, and I'll say... And yes, your new, consuming passion for me. He stepped closer, his body nearly brushing mine, but the intensity of his presence almost unbearable. We begin with the core. You have felt the connection between us, the ancient, fated bond I claim. Now, channel that connection. Let the memory of Rhexnor's cold hand fuel the heat, but let my touch be the focus that stabilizes it. He placed one cool hand flat against my sternum, right over the center of the fierce new energy pulsing beneath my skin. The simple contact sent a shocking jolt through my entire system, a current that was both painful and exquisitely seductive. Think of his rejection, Xavierus instructed, his voice low and hypnotic. Feel the fall, the shame, the unworthiness he stamped on you. Let that bitterness rise. Don't fight it. Tears sprang to my eyes, but they were not tears of sorrow. They were tears of pure, molten anger. As the rage built, the crystalline walls around us began to hum. Dust and pebbles rose from the floor, trembling. Now, anchor it, he commanded, his eyes burning into mine. Look at me. Focus on the undeniable truth of our claim, the intensity, the promise. Channel that dark energy out, not randomly, but through the force of our bond. I focused on the point where his hand met my chest, the cold marble of his touch meeting the volcanic heat of my magic. I saw his ruby eyes, the only stability in my shattering world, and I released the energy. With a ragged cry, a plume of shadow-tinged power erupted from my hand, slamming into a distant crystal pillar. The pillar shattered with a deafening crack, leaving a cloud of glittering dust. Xavierus smiled, a triumphant, devastating smile that promised both eternal love and absolute power. Excellent, my queen. You learn quickly. Now, we harness the revenge. The intense training sessions in the crystalline cavern blurred into days and nights. Each surge of the forgotten magic was tied directly to the undeniable, fierce attraction that vibrated between Xavierus and me. He pushed me to the brink, demanding that I harness the raw shame Rhexnor inflicted and convert it into pure, focused power. And with every success, his approval came not as a compliment, but as a deeper, more consuming proximity. One evening, after I had successfully shattered an entire column of amethyst using nothing but the rage-fueled shadow of my power, Xavierus led me back to the library. It wasn't just a collection of books. It was a cathedral of knowledge, lined with scrolls and bound volumes that smelled of dust and eternity. The faint light of the fireplace cast long, flickering shadows, turning the room into an intimate velvet cage. We stopped by a towering shelf. He didn't speak of magic or revenge. He simply looked at me, and the air thinned, becoming electric. My heart hammered against my ribs, no longer with fear, but with a wild, desperate hunger that mirrored the ancient hunger I saw in his ruby eyes. The physical part of our bond, the connection Rhexnor's rejection cleared the path for, is complete, Xavierus murmured, his voice a low vibration that stroked my senses. Your body has accepted my blood, recognizing the star-touched wolf's true destiny. But the claim is not merely a biological fact, Elara. It requires acknowledgement from both sides. He reached out, not to touch me with the cool confidence of a king giving a lesson, but with the quiet, devastating vulnerability of a man making a profound request. His hand cupped my cheek, his thumb brushing away the lingering exhaustion of my training. "Tell me, little wolf," he asked, his gaze burning with an intensity that demanded truth. "Is this simply refuge from the cruelty of the wolves? Or is this the fate your heart truly recognizes?" I was paralyzed by the sincerity in his eyes. In that moment, he wasn't the eternal vampire king, but the only person who had ever truly seen the immense potential and the immense need within me. Rhexnor had offered a title. Xavierus offered my very soul's purpose. "It is fate," I whispered, the word tasting like fire and shadow on my tongue. "The moment you caught me, the world Rhexnor built shattered, and yours became the only gravity left." A magnificent, devastating smile broke across his face. He leaned in, closing the final inch between us. His cool lips met mine, and the kiss was not a gentle exploration, but a sudden, violent, beautiful confirmation. It tasted of the ancient power in his veins and the rising magic in mine. The kiss was the true bond. It was the physical acknowledgement that fused our two worlds, vampire and star-touched wolf, into a single, unstoppable power alliance. He pulled me against his solid, powerful body, holding me with a strength that was both absolute possession and unwavering protection. "Then it is settled." He breathed against my skin, his words a binding vow. "You are my queen, Elara, and together we will burn the worlds that tried to keep us apart." The promise was not a threat, but a declaration of eternal, passionate love cemented by shared power. Our bond was now an undeniable reality, and it was glorious. The news hit Alpha Rhexnor Sol not as a rumor, but as a political shockwave delivered by a terrified, sweat-soaked courier. It wasn't just that Elara was alive, or that she had sought refuge with the enemy. It was the chilling, impossible extent of her ascent. She hadn't merely been claimed, she had been transformed. Rhexnor stood in his main hall, the same sacred space where he had publicly shattered Elara's destiny. The memory of the moment, the righteous scorn he had felt when he pushed her away, damning her flaw, now felt like the most colossal, self-inflicted wound in the history of the Midnight Fang Pack. He had intended to make an example of her, showcasing his own stringent purity standards to solidify his political standing among the conservative alphas. He had intended to select a more politically pliable Luna, someone who would never overshadow him. He had expected her to crawl back, broken and begging. He had expected her to perish, humiliated and alone in the woods. He certainly hadn't expected the whispers from the fringes of the supernatural courts. Elara Veil now stood beside Xavierus Blackwood, the Eternal King. He heard of her power display in the Obsidian Castle's courtyard. Not a shift into a simple wolf, but a controlled eruption of shadow-tinged elemental magic that had shattered stone and silenced ancient vampire dignitaries. His flaw was now her crown. "The king calls her his Queen of the Veil," the courier stammered, his eyes wide with fear. "And her power, it is not wolf magic, Alpha. It is something ancient, something new." Rhexnor's golden eyes, usually molten and commanding, were now blazing with a desperate, all-consuming fury. He wasn't just angry, he was utterly terrified. His rejection of Elara had not weakened her. It had unleashed her directly into the hands of his most powerful potential adversary. The implications were catastrophic. Elara, the rejected, was now Xavierus's greatest weapon, a werewolf of fabled power bound by an eternal pact to the undisputed king of the vampires. If Xavierus were to march on the wolf territories with Elara at his side, using her forgotten magic to lead the charge, Rhexnor's pack would be annihilated, and his lineage disgraced forever. He hadn't just lost a mate. He had armed his enemy with a nuclear threat. His initial arrogance melted away, replaced by a cold, sickening realization of his monumental mistake. His pack was already murmuring. The alphas who had once praised his strict adherence to tradition were now whispering about his blindness, realizing he had forfeited their greatest asset. Rhexnor paced the hall, the sound of his boots loud and frantic. He didn't want Elara back because he loved her. He wanted her back because she was a political necessity and the key to his survival. He had to reclaim her, break the ancient pact, and extinguish the rising power of the star-touched wolf before it consumed his entire world. He slammed his fist against a stone column, the sound echoing through the hall. "She is still mine!" he roared, the sound transitioning into a primal, frustrated snarl. "The goddess designated her to me. The bond ceremony was incomplete, not nullified. That vampire thief has corrupted her, but I will cleanse her." Driven by a desperate mix of fury, fear, and shattered pride, Rhexnor began marshaling his forces. He sent out aggressive, arrogant envoys to the other, older wolf packs, twisting the narrative. Elara was not claimed, she was kidnapped. She was not a queen, she was a vessel of forbidden, dark magic that needed to be purged for the safety of all lichenkind. His desperation solidified into a singular, aggressive goal. He would lead his armies to the Obsidian Castle and reclaim his former Luna by force, convincing himself that he was still the noble Alpha protecting his people, when in reality he was simply trying to survive the magnificent storm he had foolishly created. He knew the price of failure was annihilation, and that knowledge drove him to the brink of reckless obsession. The invitation arrived on parchment so old it crackled with forgotten magic, summoning Xavierus and his consort to the annual conclave of the Elder Courts. It was the perfect stage for the final stroke of my transformation, the public unveiling of the Queen Rhexnor had so foolishly rejected. Xavierus stood behind me as his personal, ancient attendants dressed me for the evening. No longer was I wearing the simple black silk of my training. This was a gown of deep emerald and obsidian lace, designed to reflect the elemental shadow I now commanded. My star-touched eyes, no longer haunted by rejection, held the cold, steady confidence of someone who knew her worth was not granted by an alpha, but claimed by an eternal king. Xavierus claimed me again, with a devastating kiss before we departed, a final reminder of the unbreakable nature of our bond, cementing our power alliance. The conclave was held in a massive, neutral chamber carved into a glacier peak, a site where the laws of blood magic were strictly enforced. Every faction was present: solemn, silver-haired Fey elders, aloof demon lords, and, significantly, a delegation of the most powerful Lycan alphas from the Northern Coalition, the very group Rhexnor was desperate to rally. We made our entrance in a calculated, shattering silence. Xavierus Blackwood, radiating undeniable power, led the way, his white hair stark against his black formal wear. But every eye was instantly drawn to me. The gasps were audible. These ancient beings had expected a broken wolf, a frightened captive. Instead, they saw a woman cloaked in her own burgeoning power, walking not beside the king but as his equal, her posture demanding respect. I met the gaze of the Lycan delegation first. They were led by Alpha Torvin, Rhexnor's fiercest traditionalist ally, and included 3 junior envoys from the Midnight Fang Pack, wolves I recognized, wolves who had been witnesses to my shame. Their expressions contorted from polite neutrality to stark, slack-jawed shock. They saw the glow of the dark magic I now commanded, and they saw the fierce, possessive claim in Xavierus's eyes every time he glanced at me. The tension was a tangible, choking fog. It broke when Alpha Torvin, spurred by Rhexnor's desperate prior pleas, stepped forward. "King Blackwood, Torvin's voice boomed, heavy with wolf arrogance. "We demand the release of the female. She is Lycan property, tainted by forbidden magics and unfit to—" Before he could finish the insulting phrase, Xavierus's gaze snapped toward him. But I raised my hand, a subtle gesture that halted the king instantly. This was my moment. This humiliation belonged to me. I took one slow, deliberate step forward, meeting Torvin's glare with the chilling stillness Xavierus had taught me. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't snarl. I simply spoke with the cold, cutting authority of the star-touched wolf. "Torvin," I said, my voice barely above a whisper, yet carrying across the entire chamber. "A rejected mate has no master. As for being unfit, I am a queen. You are a footnote. The only thing tainted here is the judgment of an alpha who discarded a galactic treasure for fear of its light." Before Torvin could formulate a reply, one of Rhexnor's young envoys, a wolf named Kale, pushed past his leader, his face red with raw desperation and fear of Rhexnor's retribution. "That is a lie! Alpha Rhexnor rejected you for the stain of your blood? He is coming to claim you and purge the darkness you have welcomed." The word darkness was his mistake. A slow, devastating smile spread across my face, cold and utterly devoid of warmth. I didn't move. I simply focused the elemental shadow I had been training to contain. The energy, fueled by the lingering memory of Kael's pitying stare during my fall, snapped to my command. A single, razor-sharp shard of obsidian material, manifesting from the elemental shadow, shot across the floor. It didn't strike Kael, but embedded itself with violent force into the marble precisely 1 inch from his boot, cracking the ancient floor. The noise was like a gunshot, echoing in the stunned silence. Kael shrieked, stumbling backward into the arms of Alpha Torvin. The Lycan delegates recoiled as a wave of cold, powerful magic radiated from me. I had used a minimal amount of power, but the display of its pure, controlled form was absolute proof. I was no longer a Lycan bound by pack laws. I was something terrifyingly new. I looked at the terrified Kael and then directly at Torvin, giving them the message they were meant to relay back to Rhexnor. "Go back to your Alpha," I instructed, my eyes burning with a terrifying mix of vengeance and power. "Tell Rhexnor that if he ever sends another messenger or utters my name in that pathetic pack den again, I will not shatter the floor. I will shatter him. I am not coming back. I am advancing." I gave Xavierus a small, confident nod. He responded with a look of fierce pride, taking my hand. The king and his newly unveiled queen turned their backs on the utterly silenced Lycan delegation and walked deeper into the conclave, and then the power of our unified presence setting a new political order in stone. Rhexnor's attempt to rally support had failed spectacularly. His envoys had just witnessed the magnificent storm they were now tasked with reporting back. The dazzling success of my unveiling at the conclave of the Elder Courts had 2 distinct consequences. It struck debilitating terror into Rhexnor, but it also provoked a far more powerful ancient force. The display of my star-touched magic, fused with Xavierus's eternal claim, was a direct, blasphemous violation of the oldest supernatural covenant. The Keepers of the Balance arrived at the Obsidian Castle 3 days after the conclave. They were not wolves or vampires, but elemental fae whose sole, uncompromising purpose was to maintain the rigid separation between the Lycan and vampire bloodlines. Their arrival was not announced, it was felt, a deep, seismic tremor that rippled through the castle's ancient wards, chilling the air and muting the magical hum of the very stone. Xavierus and I were in his private study, charting the political fallout of the conclave, when the tremor struck. I felt the intrusion instantly, my star-touched magic recoiling violently from their suffocating purity. "The Keepers," Xavierus stated, his ruby eyes narrowing into dangerous slits. His usual calm was replaced by a coiled, lethal tension. "They are the ancient law. the enforcers who have ensured that no union of this magnitude could ever threaten the delicate, miserable peace between the races. They are here for me, I realized, the coldness of their presence a physical pressure against my heart. They are here for us, Xavierus corrected, pulling me instantly behind him, his arm a shield of granite across my chest. A star-touched wolf bonded to an eternal king is the single greatest destabilizing force in their centuries-old doctrine. They see you as a plague and our bond as the inevitable start of a new, unified era they must prevent at all costs. We descended into the main receiving hall, a circular chamber carved from pure black diamond. The keepers of the balance were waiting. There were 5 of them, their forms shimmering faintly with untainted silver light. Their leader, a female named Lyra, was terrifyingly serene, her eyes holding the chilling indifference of 1,000 years spent executing sterile judgment. King Blackwood. Lyra's voice was a crystalline chime, utterly devoid of emotion. You are commanded to surrender the anomaly. The union of the Lycan and the Eternal is forbidden under the old pact. This female must be neutralized, and the balance restored. She is my queen. Xavierus's voice was a low snarl, pure predatory warning. The old pact is dust, and you have no jurisdiction here. Lyra ignored him, her serene gaze sweeping over me. The wolf blood is already corrupted by your darkness. Its power is an abomination. Surrender her now, or we will dismantle this kingdom and all who stand in the way of eternal segregation. Her threat was not an empty boast. With a subtle flick of her wrist, 4 shimmering, silvery shards of pure magical energy erupted from the floor, aimed at the king. Now, Elara! Xavierus roared, shoving me aside and drawing his sword, a blade of shadow-infused metal that instantly began clashing against the Fey energy. This was not a duel, it was a devastating, overwhelming attack. The remaining 4 keepers joined the fray, their silent, disciplined power raining down on Xavierus. They sought to overwhelm him with sterile purity, attempting to cleanse the darkness he commanded. I didn't hesitate. I threw myself into the battle, instantly understanding that the traditional pack had shackled my rage, but Xavierus had freed it. I called upon the deepest part of my humiliation and my burgeoning passion for the king. You wanted purity, Rhexnor! I screamed, the sound echoing my raw, star-touched fury. You'll get power! I threw my hands out, channeling the shadow-infused elemental energy I had trained so rigorously to control. It manifested as a swirling vortex of deep, hungry obsidian magic. It slammed into the keeper's clean silver light. The energy of the 2 forces clashed in a blinding, deafening explosion. This was the first time Xavierus and I had fought side by side against a common, overwhelming enemy. His ancient strength and skill carved a path through the keeper's defensive shields, while my raw, star-touched magic provided the necessary destructive force, ripping through their elemental purity like a dark, corrosive acid. We moved as one terrible, beautiful, unified entity, the eternal king of shadows and his queen of the star-touched wolf. Every defensive move Xavierus made was instantly followed by an offensive strike from my magic. The realization was staggering. Our forbidden bond didn't just give me power. It made us exponentially stronger than we were apart. The keepers, dedicated to keeping us separate, had just forced us into the ultimate bime, powerful fusion. We weren't just fighting for the castle. We were fighting for the legitimacy of our bond. And as I stood shoulder to shoulder with Xavierus, covered in the dust of shattered Fey magic, I knew that Rhexnor and his petty rejection were truly insignificant. My true destiny was to stand here, at the epicenter of a supernatural war, with the only man strong enough to claim my power. The air in the circular black diamond hall was a maelstrom of conflicting magic. The sterile, blinding light of the Keeper's Fey energy clashed violently with the hungry, churning shadow power of the obsidian castle. Xavierus fought with the precision and lethal exhaustion of a warrior who had defended his kingdom for millennia. But the keepers were too many, and their focused attacks on his ancient binding wounds were proving devastating. Elara, the leader of the Balance Fae, was relentless. She exploited a momentary distraction where Xavierus checked on my flank, delivering a blinding strike of silver light directly to his chest. The king roared, an ancient furious sound, staggering back and dropping to one knee, a shimmering shield of shadow magic instantly wrapping around him, protecting his heart but trapping him in a moment of critical vulnerability. "The Eternal King falls!" Elara declared, her voice a cruel, chiming triumph. "The balance is restored! Now neutralize the hybrid abomination!" But before the keepers could press their advantage, the very foundations of the castle shuddered again, this time not with fey magic, but with the primal raw fury of 100 enraged lichens. The main gates of the hall exploded inward, scattering obsidian debris. Alpha Rhexnor stood there, massive in his full shift form, his fur black, his eyes molten gold and his jaws dripping with snarls. He had arrived, dragging the remnants of his desperate pack, eager to reclaim his rejected property in the chaos. He didn't spare a glance for the powerful keepers. His focus was laser-locked on me. He saw not the queen, but the flawed, runaway female he was determined to drag back to humiliation. "Elara!" Rhexnor's voice, amplified by his lichen form, was a deafening roar that shook the crystals. "The king is defeated! Your dark choice ends now! I will take you back, scrape that filth from your soul, and restore the dignity you have betrayed." The dual threat, Rhexnor advancing with savage intent, and Elara preparing the final, purifying blow against Xavierus, crushed me, yet instantly crystallized my resolve. This was it, the ultimate pressure that Xavierus had trained me for. I looked down at the king, trapped but alive, and felt a surge of pure, ferocious love. He had risked everything for me. I was not his possession. I was his equal. I was his weapon. The memories flooded me, the cold, callous hand pushing me away, the shocked pity on the faces of my pack, the crippling shame of being called unworthy. I didn't suppress the emotion. I called it forth, letting the betrayal burn away every lingering doubt. I threw my hands wide, my star-touched magic and the residual power of Xavierus's blood fusing in a spectacular, blinding cascade. My eyes burned with twin flames of silver and obsidian, and the air around me became a tangible, roaring force. "You speak of dignity, Rhexnor?" I screamed, my voice carrying the ancient, resonant power of the star-touched lineage. "You surrendered dignity the moment you rejected your true fate for your petty political arrogance. You signed your own obsolescence." I focused my power first on Elara. The rage in my heart manifested as a whip of pure, black elemental shadow. It struck the keeper leader with the force of 1,000 years of suppressed magic, shattering her serene composure and flinging her body backward against the diamond wall. The other keepers hesitated, their white light flickering, stunned by the sheer corruptive force of the merged lichen vampire magic. With the Fey threat momentarily stalled, I turned all my fury and all my new power on Rhexnor. He charged, a massive lichen blur, intent on tearing me apart and asserting his dominance. But I was no longer the frail Luna-to-be. I met his charge not with a defensive spell, but with an aggressive wave of channeled energy. I unleashed the full force of the star-touched magic, wrapping him in an unbreakable vortex of swirling obsidian force. The vortex didn't hurt him, but it trapped him instantly mid-snarl. He was suspended, struggling violently against an invisible, paralyzing force. He was strong, but I was tapping into the source he feared, and my focus was absolute. I walked slowly toward the suspended Alpha, my emerald gown swirling, my bare hands crackling with power. I looked into his molten eyes, now filled with not just fury, but dawning terror. "You called me flawed," I stated, my voice low and dangerous. "You saw the potential to be a queen and condemned it for fear it would eclipse your tiny alpha light. The flaw was never in my blood, Rhexnor. It was in your vision." I raised my hand, not to kill him, but to do something far more complete. I ripped the symbolic packmark, the faint, psychic energy of his dominance, from his forehead. It was a vicious, non-lethal move, stripping him of the essence of his power. Rhexnor collapsed instantly, shrinking back into his humiliated human form, gasping on the floor, weak and broken. The power he had based his arrogance upon was now mine, absorbed into the foundation of my own burgeoning empire. The rest of his pack, seeing their alpha reduced to a pathetic, shivering man, abandoned their attack and fled into the darkness. Lyra, slowly rising from the wall, looked from the defeated alpha to the victorious queen and then to the king, who was slowly rising, his shadow shield dissipating. The sight was undeniable. The Forbidden Union had not failed. It had conquered. The Keepers, facing annihilation, vanished without another word. Xavierus stepped toward me, his strength returning, his eyes blazing with an emotion deeper than passion, pure, reverent awe. He didn't ask if I was safe. He simply took my hands, now cooling from the furious effort. "You saved me, my queen," he murmured, his voice thick with a new kind of possessive intensity. "You did not just defeat your enemy. You demonstrated to the cosmos that you are the eternal heart of my kingdom. You are my equal." I looked down at Rhexnor, lying defeated and insignificant on the floor of the Vampire King's hall. The rejected wolf was gone. Only the formidable queen remained. The obsidian dust settled, revealing a chamber marked by battle but defined by victory. Rhexnor lay broken, his lichen form vanquished, his shame complete. The retreat of the Keepers of the Balance was the final, undeniable proof. The ancient covenant was broken, and our union was sanctioned not by law, but by superior power. Xavierus approached me, his gaze sweeping over my still smoking hands, now cooling from the furious release of the star-touched magic. He did not ask if I was hurt. He assessed the power I had unleashed, the immense reservoir of magic that had saved his life and destroyed our enemies. His voice, when he spoke, held a new, deeper timbre. It was not just affection, but a royal reverence. "The Lycan Alpha is finished," Xavierus stated, his focus already past the petty drama of Rhexnor. "He is stripped of his dignity and his pack's fealty. The Keepers will not return. They fear what they cannot control. And you, my queen, are chaos given elegant form." He took my hands, lifting them to his lips, pressing a cool, lingering kiss against my knuckles. The current that flowed between us was no longer just the spark of magnetic attraction, but the deep, grounding flow of two immense sources of power acknowledging their fusion. We had entered the battle as king and consort. We emerged as dual sovereigns. The news of the shadow battle spread across the supernatural realms with impossible speed. The sight of a star-touched wolf commanding elemental power, and the defeat of both the traditionalist Alpha and the feared Keepers of the Balance, was the ultimate decree. Our bond was not just accepted, it was feared and respected. The supernatural world recognized its new, undeniable axis. 2 weeks later, the coronation was held in the fully restored Diamond Hall of the Obsidian Castle. The few remaining factions, the Fae who favored chaos, the demon lords who reveled in defiance, and the neutral houses who bowed to strength, were all present. This was not a wedding. It was a political and magical assertion. I stood beside Xavierus, dressed in a gown of midnight blue that shimmered with flecks of black diamond dust. My hair was braided with thin strands of silver, and my posture was that of a woman who knew she was precisely where she belonged. As Xavierus accepted his crown of dark iron, the ancient obsidian circlet was then brought forward for me. Xavierus lifted the crown himself, his ruby eyes locked on mine, filled with an intensity that promised forever and absolute loyalty. "Elara Veil," he declared, his voice resonating throughout the massive hall, not as a king granting a title, but as an eternal recognizing his true equal. "By the strength of your magic, by the bond of our blood, and by your conquest over the darkness and the light, I crown you the eternal queen of the Shadow Court." As the cool, heavy circlet settled upon my head, a final, fierce surge of power erupted from my core. The mark Rhexnor had so carelessly refused now pulsed with the dark, powerful magic of my own choosing. It was the ultimate, satisfying affirmation. My power was mine, fueled by my destiny and my vengeance. The ceremony concluded with Xavierus pulling me into a kiss that acknowledged every moment of our journey, the shame of the fall, the heat of the training, the fury of the battle, and the depth of our eternal passion. My story was complete. The rejection by a double-standard alpha, one who valued petty tradition over phenomenal power, had not been the end of my world. It had been the precise, necessary catalyst that pushed me into the arms of the one man strong enough to claim not just my love, but my full, frightening potential. Rhexnor had failed to see the Luna. Xavierus had found his queen, and together we began our eternal reign, a monument to the fierce, passionate love forged in shadow and victory. And so, Elara Veil, the rejected Luna, found her rightful place as the eternal queen of the Shadow Court. Thank you so much for listening to the complete audiobook, Rejected by My Alpha, Claimed by the Eternal Vampire King. We are so thrilled you joined us for this journey of passion, vengeance, and power. Now, we want to hear from you. Which moment was your favorite? Drop a comment below and tell us which character, Elara, Xavierus, or even the defeated Rhexnor you found most compelling. If this dark, fated romance captured your heart, please like this video, share it with a friend who loves powerful heroines, and browse our channel's playlist for more forbidden fantasy romance stories just like this one. Until the next epic romance, take care.